Oliver felt a shiver run down his spine. That means he's very scared. A remedial that even Mr. Chapman was reluctant, that means unwilling to conduct. What could it be? Chapter 7. Mr. Chapman led Oliver to a room with a thick clay door. With one hand on the doorknob, he stared intensely, that means fiercely, at Oliver. Oliver, I really don't want to conduct this remedial. So please, for the last time, what is your power? Mr. Chapman asked. I'm sorry, Mr. Chapman, Oliver answered helplessly. Mr. Chapman sighed in frustration. So be it then. Follow me, he said, and opened the door. Oh, what remedial is going to be? Immediately, a wave of heat engulfed, that means surrounded Oliver. It sizzled his skin and pricked his eyes. The intense heat was coming from a giant barbecue pit which sat on the floor at the center of the room. About 7 feet long, it was filled with glowing red charcoal pieces. Alright, Oliver, we're going to test if we are fireproof, Mr. Chapman barked. When I count to 3, run across the pit as fast as you can. Don't be scared. It's not as dangerous as it looks. As if mocking Mr. Chapman, a mighty gust of wind suddenly blasted across the pit, sending a sheet of flame soaring towards the roof. Oliver's jaw dropped. Mr. Chapman, I can't do it, Oliver pleaded. We don't have time to debate. Debate, that means argue. Mr. Chapman said, quickly now, 1, 2. That's enough, Mr. Chapman. Mrs. Woolsworth yelled as she stormed into the room. Her navy hair now burned a bright reddish pink and was engulfed in furious flames of pink energy. Even the pupils of her eyes, the black color eyeballs, okay, glowed pink. With a zap from her eyes, Mr. Chapman was no longer able to move. You have had your 6 months. It's over. Now calm down, she roared with fury. Fury, that means anger. Mrs. Wordsworth yanked on a steel chain at the side of the room, releasing it from its catch. With every clank of the chain, the fire pit descended. That means the fire pit fell down deeper below the surface before a large door slid in to seal the hole shut. Instantly, the room felt cooler. Principal, please, Mr. Chapman stuttered through frozen lips. Mr. Wordsworth ignored him and rushed to Oliver, falling to her knees and hugging him tightly. The flames on her hair had weakened to a faint glow, while a blue tone had started to creep back into her hair from its roots. Oh, Oliver, are you okay? She asked as she checked Oliver's body for any injuries. I am so sorry. This was not supposed to happen. I never approved, that means I never agreed to this remedial. Oliver felt like his head was spinning. Approve? What? Why would? But how? He stuttered. Questions gushed out of his mouth faster than his mind could phrase them. My dear Oliver, Mrs. Wordsworth sighed. Mr. Chapman believed a little stress would help release your powers. But rest assured, that means don't worry, that every remedial was approved, was agreed by me, and I was always watching over you. Until Mr. Chapman tried to sneak one behind my back, Mrs. Wordsworth growled, staring murderously at Mr. Chapman. But today's the last day, Mr. Chapman stuttered, his eyes flashing anxiously. I know what day it is, Mr. Chapman, but there has got to be another way, she retorted. Oliver looked back and forth repeatedly between Mrs. Wordsworth and Mr. Chapman. His head spun even more than before. May I know what's going on? Oliver yelled. Mrs. Wordsworth turned to face Oliver again, regaining her composure. That means feeling calm again. Oliver, she began, after the inauguration ceremony, the school council arranged an emergency meeting just to talk about you. They were divided. Some wanted you expelled immediately. Expelled, that means kicked out of the school immediately. While others wanted you to stay. You remain in school only because Mr. Chapman volunteered to rehabilitate you. That means to train you. So actually Mr. Chapman is helping Oliver, no? Oliver was stunned, shocked, okay? You mean Mr. Chapman was trying to help me? He asked in amazement. That means he was very surprised. Yes, Oliver, he was, Mrs. Woodsworth answered. He's just too proud to admit it. Unfortunately, that means too bad, in a moment of arrogance, he guaranteed, that means he promised to the council that you would be rehabilitated in 6 months. Oliver's heart sank. But it's been 6 months already. Am I expelled? He asked, desperately trying to hold back his tears. Mrs. Woodsworth shook her head furiously. Of course not, she said. Any expulsion has to go through me. And it just so happens that I'm going to be on vacation for a while. Vacation is holiday. I haven't taken a vacation in ages. I must have months of leave accumulated, that means gathered by now. Oliver breathed a huge sigh of relief. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Woodsworth, he explained. But Mrs. Woodsworth shook her head and gripped Oliver's shoulders tightly. Oliver, she began, unless we discover your power soon, I'm only delaying your expulsion. That means only if we discover your power, then can I not make you be expelled, okay? We have to step up our training. Mrs. Woodsworth looked directly into Oliver's eyes. Child, how would you like to have some special training from the principal herself? I promise it won't be anything like the remedials. Oliver's face beamed with hope and excitement. Yes, please, he replied. Mrs. Woodsworth smiled. Good, she said. Then we start tomorrow at your home, immediately after school. And remember, nobody can know I'm training you. Do you understand? Yes, Mrs. Woodsworth.